good evening and welcome to Org 50. I'm Molly and I have been producing these org events since 1998 or 1999. I'm not quite sure which. When I produced the first event in my parents' driveway. When I moved to Boston and to Cloud Club in 2008, I began hosting and curating and performing in these events much more frequently. And over these past 12 years and 50 shows, I am proud to say that Org has featured dozens and dozens of musicians. We've shown dozens of short films. We've hosted storytellers and dancers and theater artists and spoken word artists and performance artists. And it's been a completely amazing 50 show run. I want to tip my hat to the Boston-based New Gallery concert series, whose September online event, Fragility and Resilience, gave me the inspiration for the format of this evening's show. So when I invited performers to contribute to this event, I didn't give them any sort of a strict theme. I just wanted to see what these trusted artists would bring to this bizarre moment that we are all in. And as I've spent time with everyone's pieces, I see a thread of longing and loneliness and grief and quite a bit of humor and a real desire for change and movement, as well as a really amazing and fierce commitment to creativity, even in the most difficult of times. I want to thank Brian Parseval, who curated all of the short films that you'll see tonight. And I want to make a note that all of the performers tonight contributed without pay. And so if you're in a position to do so, I humbly ask that you tip and donate to this evening's program. And all proceeds raised will be going right back to the performers. There'll be donation information in the video description. So thank you so much for being here for Org 50 with us, and I hope you enjoy the show.
ignore a warning, and now the storms approach. He is anchored her to no end, and now she gets her revenge. And as the storm gathers force, will he move inland? Will he move inland? Will he change his course? We're moving inland. We're moving inland. Moving in to move out of a path brought about by our stealing, thieving, and changing
Hello, I'm Charles Coe, and I'd like to thank Molly Sastry for inviting me to be part of this event. I want to share a few poems. Communion, Spring 2020. Do you remember when we'd all meet in some favorite restaurant? Stepping in from the cold, breathing in clouds of garlic, shrugging off coats for the welcoming hugs. We'd examine the menu with the care of archaeologists blowing dust off an ancient Sanskrit tablet. And we'd all sit so close, touching sometimes, passing platters back and forth, everyone yakking at once, pausing to join in a ragged chorus of happy birthday, drifting over from another table. And finally, as our ravaged plates made their way back to the kitchen, sometimes we'd pose for a picture taken on someone's phone by an indulgent server, arms wrapped around each other, grinning like kids at high school graduation. Now, those of us who live alone search cookbooks and computers for the meals we cook for one. Post pictures of our creations online, not to brag, but to share communion, the only way we can. Something on the wind. A car waiting at a red light has a dog with head stuck out the rear window, tongue hanging out, snout twitching, beguiled by some intriguing smell. The average dog nose is 1,000,000 times more sensitive than a human's. A bloodhound's nose, 100 million times. Oh, this dog's a mutt, not a bloodhound. Genetic fruit salad, a United Nations of dog. But it has a fine nose and appears unconcerned about its lack of pedigree, focused instead on whatever it's sniffing. And it occurs to me, there might not be a more contented creature on the planet than a dog with head stuck out the window. The light turns green, the dog moves on to new olfactory adventures, and I wonder what it smelled here. What it smelled that I could never detect with this feeble human nose. Even if that nose weren't covered by the mask I'm hoping will protect me from something on the wind I can neither smell nor see. This final poem is a reflection on grief, dedicated to those who have lost family and friends and colleagues to COVID-19. When grief comes calling, grief waits patiently for the phone to ring, to bring the news that can't be borne, but must be borne. Grief comes quietly to the door, slips through the keyhole like smoke, or the long tail of a bad dream that wraps around you and won't let go. When grief comes calling, try as you might, you cannot bar the uninvited guest who sours milk, turns every bite of food to sand and dust. But as time passes, small pleasures begin their tiptoed return. The sound of dry leaves dancing on wind, the smell of baking bread. And then, one night, as you drive over the crest of a hill, a full moon lying low and huge in the sky leaps into view like a giant child playing hide and seek. And in that moment of wonder and surprise, you cross the border into a new land where grief still resides, but no longer rules.
long afloat on shipless oceans. I did all my best to smile till your singing eyes and fingers drew me loving to your isle, and you sang, sail to me, let me enfold you. Here I am, waiting to hold you. Did I dream? You dreamed about me. Were you a hare when I was a fox? Now my foolish boat is leaning, broken love, Lord, on your rocks. For you sing, touch me not, come back tomorrow. Oh my heart shies from the sorrow. Well, I'm as puzzled as a newborn child. I'm as riddled as the tide. Should I stand amid the breakers, or should I lie with death, my bride? Hear me sing, swell to me, let me enfold you. Here I am, waiting to hold you. So long afloat on shipless oceans,
Hi, stranger. It's been a while. I've missed you. It's okay. You can look at my butt. I feel like I can really be vulnerable around you. Do you like this tree I made? Cool, right? Oh, that was cool. It's so hard to make things sometimes, you know? It just takes so much mental energy, and I get so tired. I just want to sit here and relax with you. Wow, check out the sunset. It's so nice to stop and take all this in. It really makes you enjoy being alive. Even you. I love looking at you. I want to remember all your shapes. Beautiful. I've been thinking about you a lot lately. I see you trying to do so many things at once, worrying about a decision you made, or worried that you said the wrong thing to someone. You're so hard on yourself. But you're wonderful and worthy of being loved. You really are. You just have to let yourself believe it. Well, I know you're really busy and you probably have to go, but I'm glad I got to see you for a minute. I love you.
Somebody told me, don't rush into this. Fates can be sealed with a kiss, and we're works in progress, acting our ages, learning to shift gears. Objects are larger than they appear, and I don't want to stand in your way, but to be there at the end of the day. And I don't mean to be making demands, and I cannot play pretend. No, I don't want to play pretend. Setting intentions, conscious with each step. We haven't seen anything yet, and what's really important. So I just torment mountains and valleys. Spirits are willful at the growing edge of push and pull, and we haven't had our fill, but I cannot abandon myself. Better to be selfish than somebody selfish. I can't bear for this to end, and I don't want to play pretend. Can't afford to play pretend.
I suppose puppet making often begins by just gathering stuff, like materials that I find attractive, like wood and sticks and wire and leaves and flowers and petals, like bits of broken electronics and like things that have already had a life are lovely to have in puppets. And then from there you just start improvising. It's like making music. You just see where it leads you. I stick and sculpt and keep scraping and putting things together and shaping things, and then suddenly what was just stuff becomes this character staring back at you. And what I love about stop motion puppets is that they have this inherent sadness about them. They're like little actors that only ever get to play one role. Everything they do is their swan song. They have a tiny little life, and then they just go back to being inanimate objects again.
It was a cold, damp day in January. Teenage girls were talking and laughing as they prepared to take ballet class. I was seated on a steel chair at a round brown table. The table had chips in it, and I ran my fingers across the chipped wood as I anxiously awaited a response from this young music producer sitting right across from me. I was 9 months sober, and this was my first time sharing a spoken word piece I had written. It was also the first time pursuing this artist life that called me to get sober. The ballet class started. The pianist began to play a plie waltz, and as the ballet slippers glided against the marley floor, beads of sweat began to form at the corner of my temple as the young music producer looked at me and said, "I bet you have a lot of songs in you." And in that moment, my stomach caved in and my armpits began to sweat as I was transported back into time. It was a warm spring day in May in Boston's Theater District. I was anxiously awaiting the arrival of my sister. She was running late, and I was 13, and I had not learned anything about patience yet. As I leaned my back against the cool brick of the Schubert Theater, smells of greasy, cheesy pepperoni pizza danced with cigarette smoke as people took their last drags before entering the theater. I was hangry and slightly nauseous, and out of the corner of my eye, I see my sister and a couple of her friends exiting the theater and walking towards me. Before my sister could even say anything, I shouted, "Where were you? I've been waiting here forever." And to that, she replied, I was in the theater, waiting for you." And in that moment, my 5'8", overweight, awkward 13-year-old frame became an awkward 5'5" frame. I hunched over and bowed my head as I followed my sister into the theater. As we walked, I could hear one of her friends saying, "God, what is wrong with your sister?" As we walked towards the balcony, I couldn't help but notice the gross burgundy floors, and I wondered, do hotels and theaters all shop at the same ugly carpet store? And when we got to our seats, I gasped. We were in the very last row of the whole theater, and I sat down, and my 5'8" overweight, awkward 13-year-old frame barely fit into the chair. My knees hit the back of the seats in front of me, and worst of all, the stage looked like shit. We were seeing the musical that had rocked the nation, Rent, all those months of hearing Seasons of Love on the radio and dreaming about this moment, and this is what the stage looked like? I closed my eyes, and I took a deep breath. I knew I was going to see the worst musical ever. And then when the lights went down, the musical began. The power blows! As the stage came to life through lights and song and dance, for the first time in my 13 years of life, I felt seen and I felt heard. At that time, I was depressed. I had stopped showering. I wasn't doing good in school. You see, a couple years earlier, my father's addiction tore the family apart and he disappeared. And we couldn't talk about it. My father's African American, my mom's Afro-Latina. I grew up Catholic. Shame and guilt were baked into the fabric. Dysfunction and secrets were its tools. And so, seeing a show like Rent, a show that spoke to me about things that I was going through, told me that one day somebody would want to hear my story. I decided in that moment that I was going to write a musical one day. A musical about my life. A musical about addiction. As the young music producer looked at me, a type of rage and anxiety rose up to me, and I said, I didn't go to college. I didn't do well in piano classes. I don't understand what those black dots on those lines even means. I can't do it. I'm not good enough. I can't. And I sunk back into my seat, devastated, broken. And he looked at me and said, all you need to do is find a melody and you can write a song. The very next day, I found myself in a studio at the dance complex. Studio 6. This studio was on the very top floor and nobody would hear me if I didn't want them to. I sat at the upright, tan, out-of-tune piano and I looked at the keys. Some were chipped, and for some reason that brought me comfort. The voice found its way into the room, and noticing my fear said, just take a leap of faith and have a bit of hope. For the next 3 weeks, I would show up at that upright, tan, out-of-tune piano in Studio 6, and I would play for 1 hour. Not knowing what I was doing, but knowing that if I just kept showing up, eventually something would happen. At the end of those 3 weeks, I had 1 minute and 58 seconds of music. No words, just music. And I ran downstairs and found one of my new friends, and I played them the music. And as they were listening to it, I thought, whatever they say decides my fate. And when it was over, they looked at me and said, Elizabeth, it's good. It's really good. And in that moment, I became pregnant with my musical. This is treatment.
Hello everybody, I'm Valerie Thompson, this is Vesela Stoyanova, and when we play music together, we are Goli. We're so excited to be here as part of the 50th Org, and we want to thank all of you for tuning in, and Molly for having us. We're recording in the garden at Cloud Club, and it's a beautiful, brisk December afternoon, and we're really excited to share some music with you. I wrote this song that we're going to perform many years ago after a night hanging out at a nearby bar, Columbus Cafe, and if you would go there and you were with the right people, it would close and the lights would dim and they'd lock the doors and everybody would drink cheap beer and try to solve all of the world's problems or whatever it is one does at those hours of the night. And I wrote this song after a lovely evening there, so it is for you as well. Bless this place and the bodies that reside here. Bless this child, for tears will one day fall. Bless these bones and the weight that they carry. Bless the skin and the person who's hiding within. You're not the only one who's reaching out in the dark. You're not the only one who's searching for something and finding next to nothing. You're not the only one who's feeling disconnected. You're not the only one, you're just the only you. Bless this fool and the wrongs he's never done. Bless this youth and the dreams he's afraid to give anything to. Bless this whore, she gives us everything and nothing. Bless the snobs, for they only know how to shut the door on us. You're not the only one who's reaching out in the dark. You're not the only one who's searching for something and finding very little these days. You're not the only one who's Thank you very much.
When I see you stand before me like a candle burning bright, smoke still clearing from your story, and a smoldering heat and light draws me as a magnet to you, weary traveler, come home. Heal this crying baby's wounds with the salve that's in your arms. I recognize that searching. And the drive for journeying. I think I know that seeking. Never let go, you're reaching. When I see you stand before me like an ember burning bright, smoke still clearing from your story, glowing with all warmth and light, draws me as a magnet to you, weary traveler, rest your bones, hold this crying baby close to you, like iron to lost stone. The candelabra. When you go in your dark room, draw your sword in front of you. Close the door, no reaching through. I'll be out here waiting for you. When you go in your dark room, draw your sword in front of you. Close the door, no reaching through. I'll be out here waiting for you. When you go in your recognize my searching. Close the door, no reaching through. I'll be out here waiting for you. When you and the cry for journey. Close the door, no reaching through. I'll be out here waiting for you. When you I think I know that seeking. Close the door, no
One of the first things which everybody should understand is that every creature in the universe that is in any way sensitive and in any manner of speaking conscious regards itself as a human being. It knows and is aware of a hierarchy of beings above it and a hierarchy of beings below it. That is to say that wherever you are and whoever you are and whatever you are, you're in the middle. That's the game. Your senses extend a certain direction, in all directions, and therefore give you the impression of being in the middle. Because the definition of a person is where you look from. Now, everything in the world feels like that. And also it has its own kind. You see, spiders and hydras and sea urchins and so on don't look very natural to us. We say, well, I wouldn't want to look like that. But they say when they see us, well, what kind of an awful thing is that? And what a lot of nonsense it does. Now, we come here right at the start to an extremely important principle, which is the different points of view you get when you change your level of magnification. That is to say, you can look at something with a microscope and see it a certain way. You can look at it with the naked eye and see it in a certain way. You look at it with a telescope and you see it in another way. Now, which level of magnification is the correct one? Well, obviously, they're all correct, but they're just different points of view. When we examine our bloodstreams under a microscope, we see there's one hell of a fight going on. All sorts of microorganisms are chewing each other up. And if we got overly fascinated with our view of our own bloodstreams in the microscope, we should start taking sides, which would be fatal, because the health of our organism depends on the continuance of this battle. What is, in other words, conflict at one level of magnification is harmony at a higher level. And could it possibly be, therefore, that we, with all our problems, conflicts, neuroses, sicknesses, political outrages, wars, tortures, and everything that goes on in human life, are a state of conflict which can be seen in a larger perspective as a situation of harmony? Every minute little fruit fly or gnat or bacterium, I will go so far as to say, is an event upon which this whole cosmos depends. This thing goes both ways. It's not only that every little organism which exists depends on its total environment. The reverse is also true, that the total environment depends on each and every one of those little organisms. So that you could say this universe consists of an arrangement of pattern in which every event is essential to the whole thing. Now, we screen that idea out of our consciousness just as we pay attention to the figure and ignore the background. So we see one way of looking at things, namely that the organism is very frail against the environment. It lasts a long time, the environment, but the organism only lasts a short time. But actually, the whole thing is arranged in a polar system, where the enormous depends on the tiny, and the tiny depends on the enormous.
When you came into this world, there gradually arose into being the sensation of I. And it stays there a while, it goes through a development, and then it drops off. But all the time, everywhere, there are other I's starting up. See? Whether they be human, animal, anything you like. They be in other galaxies, etc. Always, they're starting up. Now, you would say there is no connection between them. No, in the same way there is no connection between the molecules in your hand. And yet you say it is a hand. But if you look at it under a powerful enough microscope, The molecules in your hand are miles apart. What's the connection between this galaxy and other galaxies? Well, we can't see any connection. And yet there are gravitational swings whereby they respond to each other and move in a certain collective order. See, what we're doing in this is not setting down a doctrine, but it is doing an exercise in perception. You can see it either way. You can see yourself, in other words, as existing only now. That's the only you there is. The alternative to that, logically, is to see yourself as everything. And so in all this, you see, when you get a game going of this kind, there comes the point of what you might call emotional investment. When you feel that the outcome of this particular feature in the game is urgent. See, this matters. And it's up to you what you think matters. We teach our children what matters, what's important for them to learn. And we teach them basically that it's important to live. And in a way, every being in this world is torn between going on and goofing off. We feel that's the basis of our distinction between work and play. Play is everybody needs some time to goof off. But they must go back to work because you've got to farm and fish and manufacture and produce so that you can go on. But when you see you have this terrifying urgency to go on and feel you must, this is important, this matters, we screen out of our consciousness the fact that this is our own volition and our own game. And the difficulty is that as we become disturbed and anxious about this, it's more difficult to keep the game going. In proportion as we are frightfully concerned to survive, we start fighting other people. We start clobbering our neighbors and whatever it is, all the old fights start. And it is these fights which, more than anything else, at the moment, you see, are endangering the entire human project. But all based fundamentally on the illusion that it's utterly important that we survive. But you see, in all this, what underlies is the illusion that I am going on, that I constitute a real continuity from this moment to the next moment, to the next moment, to the next moment. What are you afraid of losing when you die? Yes, everything that you've acquired as an individual and stored in your brain is dissolved and distributed. But at the same time, it is equally obvious that when you die, there won't be, following the moment of death, everlasting nothingness.
So, you can become aware of this tremendous interconnectedness of everything. Just as fronts go with backs and tops with bottoms, insides with outsides, solids with spaces, so everything that there is goes together. And it makes no difference whether it lasts a long time or whether it lasts a short time. A galaxy goes together with all the universe just as much as a mosquito. You can get a certain vision of life where everything is seen to be a complex pattern of rhythm. Dances, the human dance, the flower dance, the bee dance, the giraffe dance. And that's what this all is. It's jazz. You see? This is a big jazz, this world. And what it's trying to do is to see how jazzed up it can get. How far out this play of rhythm can go.
May your unacquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind. May your unacquaintance be forgot and the rolling sign. And the rolling sign. And the sign will drink a toast to loneliness and the sign. With all distractions stripped away, just me, myself, and I. When best laid plans are jettisoned, fuck all anxiety and all anxiety and all anxiety. We'll drink a toast to helplessness and the rolling sign. Should all existence bring distress, the options aren't to find. Should all existence lose its bliss along with all anxiety? We'll drink a toast to hopelessness and all anxiety. We'll fight the fight of tired souls. We'll fight to save our minds. We'll fight, we'll die, we'll come out whole with battle wounds of pride. All anxiety. We'll drink to next year's happiness and all anxiety. We'll drink to next year's happiness, all anxiety.
Thank you so much for being a part of tonight's Org 50. I want to say a huge thank you to all of the performers for their beautiful contributions to this evening's program. I also want to say a tremendous heartfelt thank you to all of the invisible people who have helped make these events possible for 12 years. I have an amazing team of loyal, dedicated volunteers. I have a phenomenal, loyal audience. There's been amazing photographers who have documented these events show after show, year after year. If it wasn't for all of you, I wouldn't be able to keep making these shows happen. And I want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart. I want to thank the amazing, beautiful Cloud Club for hosting these events, the vast majority of which have taken place in this physical space of Cloud Club. Keep in touch with the artists from tonight. I'm going to put information on how to do so in the video description, as well as donation information so you can support financially the artists who you saw tonight. I miss and love you all, and I'm looking forward to doing this again. Probably a few more will be remote before we can meet in person. And I'm going to leave you now with a photo montage. I scoured the internet and stole lots and lots of photos from the 12 years of orgs and put them together into a sort of nostalgic walk down memory lane. The song you're going to hear that you heard at the beginning of the event and that's going to come back during the montage is by Jamie Mallari. It's called Beautiful Dream. And I find it really fitting because as I looked back over all of these photos and thought about this 12-year 50-show run, it has truly felt like a beautiful dream. Thank you so much. Good night.
Thank you.